this is where we're answering questions for you. So so if you don't have them, I had Lena kind of come up with a couple that she's had come in with her. So, all right, Catherine's got your hand raised. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Catherine, and let's, did you want me to give you the share screen?
No, I'm okay. I just have a question.
Okay.
I'm interested in growing a mixed shrub hedge that would do well in Idaho Falls, or maybe just outside Idaho Falls, but our typical soil and climate.
A mixed shrub hedge.
Yeah.
So are you, when you say mixed, you talking height, different heights?
No, I could prune it to the height. I'm just looking for what I'm kind of thinking about doing is going with the British hedgerow type of separation of areas or yards, but they use mixed species in the hedgerow, and so I'm trying to get some mixed species that would do well here.
I know that some of the things that I do in my own hedgerow, I do kind of a mixed deal, but it's not really all hedge species necessarily. I'll put a little bit of dwarf lilac trees in there amongst them, and then of course have the firebush and things like that in there. But what I've got is not necessarily all hedges. What do you think, Ron, about just pure hedges like privet and stuff?
If you're going to hedge them, prune them to hedge to the same size, and I've never been to England or Great Britain, but the pictures I've seen, they all look like they're the same plant if they're pruned and hedged the same way. Now, if you want to have a variety of plants in there, let them get to their natural size and shape and texture and all that kind of stuff, then the mixed hedge is a great way to go. The firebush, the Euonymus compactus alatus, that's a nice one. You get a really nice red color out of that one in the fall. Let's see, there was another one that kind of went past my brain cell as she was talking. The Siberian pea tree or pea shrub, the Siberian pea shrub, it can get, I mean, how tall are you looking, Catherine?
I'm thinking 4 feet.
Oh, 4 feet. Okay. Well, even the dwarf winged euonymus is probably too tall for that. So if you're looking 4 feet, we're looking more potentilla type size, potentilla and
even some junipers would do that.
Yeah, the tam juniper doesn't get a whole lot over.
Be careful on those junipers. Lots of times I've seen people really do some damage. They'll prune them back too heavy right into the brown, and once you do that, they won't sprout and green back up, and then they have to come out because they will be an eyesore from 3 blocks away.
Yeah. If you're going to prune the junipers at all, yeah, that's true. Good point. So let's see, shrubs. I'm trying to think smaller shrubs. Are you looking? You want to avoid thorns?
Well, if I'm gonna have to do a lot of pruning, I want to avoid thorns. But if I could get something going that didn't need a lot of, that maybe just need a little outside shaping, not a lot of interior pruning, then some thorns would be okay.
Okay. Well, the red twig dogwood doesn't, I mean, it gets a little taller than that, but it doesn't take a whole lot of pruning to keep it back down to size. The cornus,
red twig dogwood, red ochre, and Siberian.
The red osier, red twig dogwood. Yeah. That's one option there. I mean, the barberries are not too bad of a plant if you're not going to do any pruning. They're kind of a pain when they get a little bit ranked to get those old branches out, and so keep that in mind. Very sharp thorns on those. but potential is, some people don't like the potential. I personally like it. I think Lena doesn't like it, but you know, a lot of it's personal taste. They've got a nice flower. It's a native plant, nice flower to them. And some of them are, you know, bright yellow to almost a pinkish flower on some of those newer cultivars. So that's an option.
Ron, we
yeah.
had someone ask about 9-bark or holly maybe working in the chat. And then someone wants to know, when you're done with little hedge plants, what about a 20-foot hedge?
Okay, so yeah, 9-bark can get 6 or 7 feet tall. The ones that I've had, but they're a nice plant. I really quite like those. You've got there's several cotoneasters that would fit into that. Peking cotoneaster is one of the taller ones, but you have some smaller, shorter cotoneasters that would do quite well in a hedge, in a mixed hedge that you allow to grow naturally. So those are some ideas.
And Ron,
I like the Peking cotoneaster. And
on that other question, if you're looking at like the smallest trees, you know, that are around, you know, less than 25 feet, some of the crab apples will do that. And I've got a golden rain tree that's a little bit higher than that. That might get up around 30 feet. And then the other ones that get down to about 20. I've got a Japanese lilac tree that is less than 20 feet tall. And then there's also, I'm just kind of going through some of the smallest ones that you've got.
So Reed's talking about the golden rain tree, but the golden rain tree, you get north of Pocatello and it won't survive very well.
Right. And it doesn't survive that great in Pocatello. And Ron doesn't like trees that are, you know, trashy. And I think the golden rain tree, it's called the golden rain tree because it rains down trash all the time. So.
It does produce a lot of seeds. The nice thing about it though is that those seeds drop and they grow right there. It's not like the Siberian elm where the seeds just blow in the wind and you've got seeds showing up all over the place.
And then there's also that staghorn sumac, which can be as small as 15 feet, but it will really cause a lot of suckering, and a lot of people don't like it because of that.
They can. My dad had a staghorn sumac that never, well, it probably suckered, but we kept it mowed down, and so it was never a problem. But if you've got it in a shrub bed, they can take over the shrub bed. That's true.
And yeah, those are some of the really small trees. And you know, to tell you the truth, Ron, that I like those almost more than anything because people's yards are extremely small nowadays. And you know, once you get up into medium-sized trees, even they're too big for most people's yards.
Yeah. And that Siberian pea shrub, it'll get 10, 12 feet tall.
Uh-huh.
It'll actually tolerate hedging quite a bit if you're going to do some hedging kind of thing. I've seen quite a few of those hedged. Got a pretty flower in the springtime.
But you're saying the golden rain tree, then you guys don't have them hardly at all in Idaho Falls, huh?
I've never seen them up here.
Yeah.
I know we had them down in Price. It was one of those trees that did really well down in Price, but it's one of those zone 5, maybe as a warm zone 4 type tree.
Mm-hmm.
So
I've got one in my yard and it seems to be doing okay. It's not, you know, but I always say to myself, I'm just waiting for the year that'll have 20 below and it'll kill it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So how's that, Catherine? That help you out?
No. Yes,
No?
thank you.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Joe, did you have a question?
I don't know how to use my phone.
Oh, well, you're not muted, so I just wonder if you had a question or if you're okay.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was going to say that those barberries make a good hedge if you just stay on them and prune them. Them and the privets, you can shape them. Those other hedges you're talking about, I have a red ochre and a Siberian pea shrub hedge, and you got to continually cut the dead growth out of the red ochre down at the bottom. And the Siberian pea shrubs, once they get taller, they get stemmy. But
well, beautiful hedges They're all about pruning. Don't think you're
Yeah.
going to have a hedge without a bunch of work in it.
So that's where you get into select the plants that are going to be the size you want them to be so that you don't have to do that much pruning. I am not a strong proponent of hedging. If you have a formal landscape with a very formal structure, house architecture kind of a thing, that's fine. You can do it. But you have to do it throughout the summer. You can't just do it in the springtime, or you can't just do it in the fall. And so you just have to keep after it. It's just a maintenance issue. It's like mowing your lawn almost.
Yeah, Ron, one time I saw, a log house here in Chubbuck. Is a log house with a pruned hedge. And, while I love log houses and there are places where I like pruned hedges, it's not a work of art. It just rattles your brain when you see stuff like that. So, hedges, they need to be in the right type of landscape.
Right. Yeah, especially, well, the formally pruned hedges now.
Right.
And if you're going to do hedges with the tall hedge, it's not a bad idea, because I just noticed in the chat that Lena had mentioned, you got this tall red osier dogwood that's 10 feet tall, 10 feet tall, and you can see right through it. And so you're not getting the visual barrier. And so that's where you want to get those mixed plants that are maybe a little bit shorter, tall, shorter type things to provide a better visual barrier.
Yeah.
Okay, other questions?
You're supposed to have questions that are supposed to stump on. So
yeah, stump the
it's
chop here.
Which has already probably happened for me. Just one question will stump me. But
Aphids on peppers. Is that what you're saying, Simmons?
Yeah, I have a real problem with aphids eating my peppers. You have something I can do about that?
spray them off really hard with water every 3 days.
Yeah, the best thing to do is to just do a stiff spray of water and blast them off the plants. Those aphids won't find their way back. There are some that'll hang on, they'll still be there, but the plants can tolerate a little bit of aphid presence. And then we have a lot of beneficial insects that will come in and help. But if you start spraying to kill the aphids, you'll actually kill the beneficials as well, and the aphids will recover faster. Then you have a worse problem. So a stiff spray of water is the first best response. And if that doesn't do it, then a horticultural oil might work. Of course, you have to kind of worry about some damage to the leaf tissue if it's later in the season when it gets hot. But those are some options. What I usually do is when I see those, I'll just squish the aphids so that the scent of their body will escape, and that will bring in a lot of the beneficials, those that eat. There's a lot of things that eat aphids. So
yeah, and Ron, a lot of people that get mad at me about spraying them, they say, well, you have to do it frequently, and you do have to do it frequently. But the odd thing about it is if you go to the chemical route, and then end up killing some of the predators like what you're talking about, the aphids are so fecund that you're actually spraying with an insecticide about as frequently as you'd be spraying with the water. And you're not saving any time because you got to mix it up. You've got to calibrate. You've got to do it right. So the strong spray of water with aphids has been amazingly helpful.
yeah,
I've started spraying with the water, and like you say, it must be a little more diligent than I've been, I guess, because the little buggers just keep coming back.
Well, get some pressure on there. Those leaves are getting sometimes almost to the point of tattering. So you can't just lightly wash them. You got to get the nozzle on that thing and have the leaves hitting back and forth, because if the leaves aren't whipping back and forth when you're spraying them, you're missing almost all of the aphids. They'll be on the underside of the leaf, just taking a shower. So
spray them from underneath, and it's got to be a stiff spray. It's not a gentle shower. It's a stiff spray. You're just blasting those things off, fire hose kind of a thing.
Like once a week or something, I guess, huh?
Yeah,
a little bit more frequently if you have a population explosion.
Keep an eye on it, and if now also be looking for, when you see those aphids, look for the aphid mummies, look for the ladybug larvae, look for the lacewing larvae, look for the the minute pirate bug and the damsel bug. There's a lot of things that will eat aphids. So look for those things as well. And if they're out there doing that and the plants are not showing a lot of stress, blast them off, the predators will come back a lot faster. They'll find their way back. The aphids, once you blast them off the plant, they have a hard time. They may go to another plant, but they'll have a hard time coming back to your plant. So
Thank you.
yep. We got someone else trying to talk.
Blues, how much can you grow underneath it? And my answer is not much. When I've got a Colorado blue spruce in my backyard, and I intentionally decided not to limb it up because I personally don't like it when you limb those things up, because then you've got a dead patch of ground underneath it. So I have kept my spruce with the branches way low, and it looks a lot nicer. It looks natural, it looks nice. But once you limb those up, hostas, I can't find anything that really grows them. Can you, Ron?
I've just chilled out the really, really sparse lawn under my spruce trees this year, and we'll see if I can find something that'll work. I'm hoping.
That's a tough question. I think you did jump us on that one.
Yeah, the hostas require quite a lot of moisture. They need to be fairly moist, evenly moist soil. And so I'm gonna try it and see. I inherited a number of spruce trees here, and they were already pruned up somewhat, and had to mow underneath them. After hitting my head very seriously a couple of times, I've decided I'm not going to mow underneath those spruce trees anymore. That's going to be flower beds or just wood chips.
And I see that Lena wrote bishop's weed. I've got bishop's weed. I tried bishop's weed on my place, and I say it works good, and I'm sure it does, but it didn't work good in my situation. So maybe weed works in certain places. If you do something, Lena, like I don't know, leaching it or something, or maybe if you rake up all the needles, and then maybe bishop's weed will work on it. Do you rake up the needles then, Lena? Or?
Sorry, trying to find my unmute button. So in that particular yard, the needles did not gather as bad. Most of them ended up going over the fence into the neighbor's yard. And I did rake them up really well, the ones that were in my yard, and the bishop's weed did fine. I had some impatiens that did okay. I did try hostas in 2 yards under spruce trees, and they just die. They're not happy. So
the thing I don't like about bishop's weed is it can escape quite easily.
Yeah, it really
it'll get out into your lawn. It's not quite as bad as yarrow.
Here's a
when it
good
gets into
question.
the lawn.
I like this other question on it. It says, how do you get your neighbors have got quaking aspens? And I'm sure what she means, there's a lot of little suckers coming up in her yard. And she said, how to take care of it. Well, if you hit those quaking aspens with 2,4-D, it will kill them. You got to be careful with 2,4-D in your yard, though. No, don't spray it on a hot day or a windy day. But you've got to remember, those trees are connected directly to the other trees, and you could take out their trees by using weed and feed. So I don't recommend it, because you get big
we can't recommend that you do something that will kill your neighbor's tree.
Right.
So
but just be aware that whatever you do on your yard with weed and feed, that's another thing to remember, though, is whatever you do on your yard with weed and feed, if your neighbor's got a quaking aspen or a blue spruce or some other tree, you can really affect those other trees. And I see that maybe 3 or 4 times a year in my yard calls, where somebody has their tree is dying, and the neighbors are using heavy doses of weed and feed.
Yeah. Or a lot of times just people will send you pictures, or they'll bring in a vegetable, tomato especially, that's showing obvious herbicide damage. And you're saying, well, what you've got here is herbicide damage. And they said, but I'm not spraying anything. Well, your neighbors probably are. And if it, like Reed said, if it gets up above 85 degrees for the next 72 hours, anytime in the next 72 hours, it gets above 85 degrees. Now, I know they say 90 degrees. I'm very cautious when it comes to this, because I've just seen too much of the damage. So if it gets above 85 degrees, that will volatilize and shift and drift to non-target plants. And you didn't do anything wrong. It just one of those things. where somebody, and it might have been you putting something on your lawn even, just be aware of that temperature problem. 2,4-D and dicamba both are very volatile when it gets hot.
I was the extension agent in Power County in American Falls for 6 years. For a little while. It was in between the time that I was Bannock County Extension Educator and then Power and then back to Bannock and Bingham. But when I was in Power, there was a few people that said they didn't spray and their neighbors didn't spray. And after a few years, I noticed that if you guys want to go see what 2,4-D and dicamba damage looks like, just go to almost any yard in American Falls and the whole town every summer. Almost anything that's remotely susceptible to any kind of herbicide will show that curling and cupping of the leaves. And it's kind of related to, there's just a lot of 2,4-D that's used in that area surrounding the town.
So Reed, I got a question. How much irrigation have you guys had going on this year so already?
Not much. It's been a pretty good year for not irrigating, especially since we just had the little bit of rain that we had. But there were people that had started irrigating a little bit too soon, in my humble opinion. However, this week is the first time water's come through the canal for people. So
yeah,
you know.
So if you've irrigated already, you probably have irrigated too soon.
Mm-hmm.
My neighbor across the street's been irrigating every morning or every couple of days already. And the idea is, well, it's going to make my lawn green up faster. No, it's not. The moisture's already there in the soil. Irrigating is not going to make that lawn green up any faster.
So I haven't irrigated mine yet at all. I
haven't
got my
either.
irrigation system running, but I haven't turned it on yet. And if you take a 6-penny nail, you can shove it right down in the ground and you'll notice that it's got a little bit of moisture there.
Yeah, I just use a long screwdriver.
Or a long screwdriver.
Just a screwdriver, and just if you can shove it into the soil, no problem. Don't worry about it. Now, if it gets kind of hard to shove into the soil, you can get it down 3 or 4 or 5 inches, but it's hard to shove in. Then it's time to start thinking about irrigating. The problem is when you start irrigating too early in the spring, especially we're talking usually lawns, the roots will go where the water is, right? And so if you irrigate too early, they never grow deep. The roots will never grow deep. They'll stay shallow. If you let the ground kind of dry out a little bit, the roots will start to go deeper and deeper. So in the springtime, you don't need to water every day. You need to water maybe every 8 or 9 or 10 days. Last year, I think I watered once in May. Okay. You just kind of watch it and let the lawn tell you when it's time to irrigate. Don't just go out and say, oh yeah, well, it's springtime and I turn on my water and start irrigating. It's too early yet for most. Just use that screwdriver method or 6-penny nail or whatever and test.
I remember, Ron, one time they asked me to go out and judge all the lawns in Pocatello around ISU, and judge the lawns. Well, I never got asked to come back and do that again because I judged them based on proper management and good weed control, good disease control, and good fungus control. They couldn't have any fungus or mottled spots. They couldn't have any. I dug around and made sure they didn't have any crane fly larvae or June bug larvae, white grubs. And then I judged them on that. And apparently I got it wrong because what they wanted me to do was just run out there and find the greenest lawn and put a blue ribbon on the greenest lawn. And Kentucky bluegrass in its native environment goes a little bit light green in the summer. And if you're keeping it absolutely green all the time, you're probably setting yourself up for especially damage with bill bugs and other things like that. So yeah. Don't ask me to judge your lawns if you just want me to judge them green, because they could have got anybody to judge the greenest lawn.
Yeah, unless they're colorblind.
Right.
So I've got another quandary for you along with the water. Almost a month ago, we were out on a Saturday morning and we drove home, and I noticed as we were pulling down our lane, our neighbors on each side were both out fertilizing their lawn, one of them quite heavy, and then neither of them ever watered. They still haven't watered their lawns, and it didn't rain for almost a week after. So what about finding a fertilizer in the spring?
That's okay. It'll just sit there. Now, it depends on what fertilizer they use. If they're using urea, it might volatilize on a little bit, but as soon as it waters in, as soon as it rains, it'll go right into the ground. And so I don't have a Ron. I don't know, but I don't have a problem with people fertilizing. For instance, I fertilized my lawn a couple of weeks ago, but I haven't watered it. And so what you just described is kind of what I do.
So it's not going to burn it off?
Well, if you over fertilize it, will. I mean, I'm following the recommended rates and stuff. And no, it usually doesn't. It usually doesn't do much until the water hits it. It's the water that'll leach it down into the ground, or with urea. Now, urea sometimes will volatilize with just the dew. And so you do like to water that stuff in, but I don't like using urea necessarily because it's kind of expensive and a little bit more than what my lawn needs, you know?
Right.
So
Okay, you guys had another question in the chat here. I have an umbrella tree that is getting infested with a type of boring bug. What is your advice?
you know, once they get a borer, it's really, really tough to control. So umbrella tree, what do you mean? I'm trying to picture what you mean by umbrella tree.
You talking about a camperdown elm? Because the elms will get borers in them.
It may not be a borer as much as it's an ornamental, I don't want to say this word wrong. Catalpa is what it looks like. That's the tree that it looks like I have. I inherited it with the house.
Oh, catalpa?
Okay.
A catalpa?
Yeah. And it is just, and it just gets these little, well, it's more like a scaly type. It's just all over the bark, all over the
It's probably scale.
Probably
And
scale.
dormant oil is what you want to use on that.
Yeah, if about now would be a decent time to treat those when the buds are swelling. Spray them with the dormant oil. 2% dormant oil spray, I believe, is what's recommended. Read the label on it, but get you a horticultural oil or a dormant oil and spray that. That will help to those scale quite a bit.
And Terry, take a picture and send it to Ron or somebody to make sure we know what we're talking about. But if you take a picture of it, we'll know what it is. But just don't take a blurry blob picture. Take a nice one.
Yeah. And then I'll send it to Reed and he'll tell me who else to send it to. Now
Hey, I got to go, so I've got to do some interviews. I'll see you guys later.
All right. Thanks, Reed. Okay. So, yeah. Other questions, I guess I can try to handle a few more, but we've gone an hour already, so we will do this again with the Ron and Reed show. The plant talk.
Someone mentioned planting some bulbs under spruce trees works, and I've definitely seen lily of the valley under spruce trees, but that gets away even faster than bishop's weed.
Well, a still bee would probably work, and columbine would work. They're not going to be, whatever you plant, it's not going to be a thick, dense planting just because you don't have the light capture to support a thick, dense planting. But a lot of those would work okay. Well, thank you for joining us, and we'll have fun to do that.